as well as help with research. And I'm really most excited about, I guess, the next 10 feet of what digital looks like. So this topic of having a strategy seems like a very interesting one, which is why I'm here. But many utilities are, well, many of the utilities we speak to are very overwhelmed by digital and where to go, and many haven't implemented, I guess, evaluation tools. And so having a strategy seems to be the best, one of the best ways to overcome that particular problem. So I guess that's my particular interest. Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for joining, Amy. Jeff?
I am Jeff Shiner. I work for the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District, so it's about 6:30 in the morning here.
Nice and bright, looks like.
Yeah, it's not bad. My area of responsibility, I work in the program planning department within our engineering department, and I'm the team lead for the modeling group, and I also oversee the remote sensing efforts at the district. So that's kind of what's got me involved in the smart utility conversation at our organization. We're kind of kicking that off right now, and I actually just signed a contract with Jacobs to help us along the way to developing our wet weather optimization program for one of our major service areas in the district. So we're excited to be embarking on that journey.
Oh, that's great. Collecting a lot of data for model calibration, I would imagine.
Yeah, we're in pretty good shape with the model. We got a little bit fine tuning to do, and then we're moving towards a digital twin with our. That's kind of our end goal with that, with the model.
Oh, that's great. Great, excellent. Thanks, Jeff. Adrian?
Yeah, hi. I work for City West Water in Melbourne, Australia. My role is Intelligent Networks and Assets Team Leader, focusing on emerging technologies, very keen focus at the moment on digital metering or AMI trials. What excites me about technology, the concept of digital twin as an endpoint, absolutely very exciting. I think we're an awfully long way from that. But in the meantime, what excites me is actionable insights from joining different data sets and a level of automation and intelligence to get actionable insights rather than reactionary, which is our current state more than likely.
Yep. No, that's great. Thanks, Adrian. Aaron, excuse me.
Hi, I'm Aaron Fisher with the Water Research Foundation. I work on the LIFT program, which is our innovation effort here. The foundation represents about 1,000 utilities, largely through North America and Australia, but also a few others internationally. And really what we do is we help pool their resources to fund research. But the LIFT program is focused a little bit one step further in terms of helping utilities understand and implement innovation. Certainly digital water is one of those areas that has been high on the interest area for our membership for a long time, but obviously understanding that just because they're interested doesn't mean they're comfortable with it quite yet. So the biggest thing for me in terms of what I'm most excited about is the convergence of a lot of different trends into the hands of the operators. So I think as folks are working out in the field or as they're making decisions, making that individual smarter may ultimately helps the organization accomplish the mission of protecting public health and the environment.
Yep, that's great. Thanks, Aaron. Rebecca?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can, yep.
Okay, perfect. Hi, so I'm Rebecca Losley, and I work with Jeff Shiner in St. Louis at the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. I lead the planning group, including the modeling team, for all the capital project planning for St. Louis. We're in the 5th year of our consent decree with US EPA and Missouri Coalition for the Environment. And I'm excited about digital twins because I want to save money on our capital program. I also want to make the projects that we build work better to improve water quality. And I'm hoping to improve level of service for our customers.
Brilliant. That's great. Thanks, Rebecca. Amin?
Hello, I'm Amin. I'm joining you from Italy.
Welcome.
Yeah, and I'm a research assistant at the University of Pavia. I'm responsible for doing a research contract launched by Lombardy region. And my expertise is developing decision support systems for the clients of the water organizations. And I'm so interested in smart water networks, and that's why now I'm here. And also the most excited things about our organization. As I'm involved in the university affairs, I think in e-learning launched by the advanced computers is the most exciting things for me.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Amin. And Thomas.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with audio. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you,
Uh,
Can you hear
yeah,
us? We can hear you.
I work. Yeah, I'm struggling to hear. So I might try to find a different way of connecting in. I work for Melbourne Water in Australia.
Oh, great.
We're a bulk water and wastewater utility. We also look after stormwater and waterways. I look after the asset management research program. So normally that's, I guess, dealing with a knowledge base that informs or is missing in engineering. And I guess what excites me is digital engineering and the conversations that go around that, because what asset management is not, it's not just design, build, cut the ribbon and walk away. A lot of questions about what happens for the next 20 to 100 years.
Yeah.
And the whole digital twin thing has got to be an open door to the biggest part of the pie, which is after the ribbon cutting ceremony.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's great. Thanks, Thomas. And you came through clear, so that's great. Hopefully you can hear us okay. Well, if anybody else should join us throughout the call, we'll get an introduction from them as we go along, but we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. Have I missed anybody? I think that we've got everybody on the call. Brilliant. Okay. Okay. So this is a very broad topic, obviously, and we've got a wide range of folks on the call, which is fantastic from different organizations in different parts of the world. And I think that that's fantastic because it should help us have a robust conversation. What I really wanted to talk about is there's obviously so much with respect to digital water. Even what is a digital utility? What are smart water technologies? What are we trying to do? Are we looking to solve a specific problem, or like some of the comments that we just heard were, how can we do more with the data that we have? So I really thought that I would just start off the first discussion topic in today's roundtable discussion with respect to the evolution of the use of water. Obviously, with aqueducts, we go back through over 3,000 years with how people have used water and how we have worked with water, and technologies have obviously evolved significantly since that point, and they will continue to do so. And so I think that poses some interesting challenges with respect to how do we go to the next generation of how do we operate our water utilities, but equally as such, how do we protect ourselves such that the investments that we're making now will still be sound investments tomorrow as technologies continue to evolve. So there's a lot that we need to consider, and doing some detailed planning is a good way to try to make sure that we can continue to get a return on investment from where we are today and still be prepared to integrate technology advancements tomorrow. So a few questions that I just wanted to throw out there. What is next? Where do we think that it's going to go? Quite a bit of discussion around digital twins. There's obviously that's really kind of the next paradigm really of smart water and where we're looking to go, and how we tie that into operations, not just planning. And what is a digital organization? So digital organization really is collecting of data, information creation, generating actionable insights to improve efficiency, proactive operations, mitigating risk, integrating resiliency. And digital organization is obviously more than just the water industry. So just about every industry, you know, around the world, every market is going down that digital path. And there's a lot that we can learn from those other industries as well. So much in common with everybody on the call, yet each of our journeys are unique. There's obviously no one size fits all solution. But really what I wanted to start off with today, following the introductions, was what do you see in your digital future or your client's digital future? We heard quite a bit about digital twins, but specifically, is there building upon what we talked about during the introduction, what do you see in your clients or your digital future? Any thoughts on that? I might just start a little bit with some of what I've experienced in really the last 5 years that I've had working in the role of technical lead in the Australia and New Zealand region for a lot of our clients. And one of the challenges that we've had is that a lot of utilities, including Wide Bay Water, who I came across in 2006 from the United States to work with for 3 years, and they were quite innovative, particularly back then with the implementation of district metered areas, full smart metering, and pressure management. So they were really doing a lot of reuse schemes. They were doing quite a bit back then. And what was really quite interesting is the learning journey that they've gone on. And even with the AMI, you know, we went through speaking of modeling, there's a few folks on the call here involved in modeling. I managed their water wastewater network modeling team. And one of the challenges that we had, well, one of the opportunities that we had with the AMI smart metering is that we were doing assessment of diurnal patterns and demands on a DMA by DMA basis. But had some challenges at that point with respect to retaining the data, extracting the data, using the data. It was obviously very, very data intensive, and there were some challenges with the systems that were set up at that time. And since that time, and coming across to SKM and now Jacobs, and working with our water utilities, often what I've found is that we often, whether it's vendor driven or whether it's driven by the utility to solve a specific problem, it's very common that there's an investment made in a particular technology or a particular solution to solve a problem, but the insights, we heard a bit about actionable insights. Those insights tend to be contained within that solution or trying to solve that problem. Now, there's obviously value in that data, value in that information. How can that be brought across into a central BI system or being used in other aspects of that water utility? And I think that that's really one of the big opportunities is now, I think, you know, particularly some of the larger utilities have made quite a few investments already, whether it's AMI, whether it's an intelligent water network solution. And the information that we're collecting from that, are we retaining it? Are there third-party rights? Do we actually need to pay to access it? Is it part of a subscription? Do we lose it after that time? If we have that data, how do we tie that together for use in other systems, whether it's finance or assets or engineering or planning? So I think that tying that information together is one of the big challenges, and that really forms the part of putting together a comprehensive planning exercise on really where are you now, where do you want to be. Did anybody want to share some thoughts on that with respect to where you are at your organization?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think you just said a lot of the things that we're grappling with and thinking about right now. As we've collected a lot of data already, I feel like, and it's just the tip of the iceberg for what we need to really embark on. What we're hoping to do are some real-time control solutions to help mitigate CSOs in our one of our largest service areas. And to do that, we're gonna start a pilot, select a couple of CSO areas that we can control, hopefully using real-time control solutions. The daunting part of that is you're right. We need data in real time to be able to do that, and I think that's one of the limiting factors right now is how do you get real-time data you can trust and then you can act on, and then starting to tie all that together with not just hydraulic modeling and real-time control of these CSO points, but then really long range looking at what you can do with a digital twin and doing asset management. I mean, we have parts of our system that are 150 years old. So how do we start to bring all that together so that we can more effectively manage our system? We're just starting to ask those questions and answer those questions. So it's exciting to be a part of it, but at the same time, it's overwhelming to think about all the information you're going to have to deal with, and then how do you get that in the right person's hands, or how do you start making actionable decisions on that data you're collecting? It's really cool to be part of it. It's exciting, but it's also at the same time like, how are we going to do all this?
Yeah, I can imagine be quite overwhelming. And the one thing that I've found that's often quite interesting is that we find that a lot of our water utilities can be siloed, and often that's not intentional, and oftentimes we think that we're not siloed, but and when you really start to dig down into what are the needs, what are the requirements of each individual sector of our businesses, we often find that we are. And the information that we require might be different from the team sitting next to us. And was working with one utility in Australia, and we were actually doing an assessment of really their operations to determine if they were if they were ready for a particular intelligent water network solution that they were looking at the time. And the way that we did that was we applied a maturity model, and we'll talk in a little bit about maturity models, but we also conducted interviews with each of the groups within the organization, including finance and including engineering and operations and planning and assets. And it was really quite fascinating because the priorities with the different groups are obviously quite different. And for example, the planning group was really relying on time series information coming from monitoring points for model calibration. And the operations team was like, look, we are in brush fire mode 24/7, and we are not actively maintaining any of the sensors within our network that's not part of an active control loop. So as the planning team was going through and building their models, they thought that data was going to be there for them to use for model calibration. Come to find out that most of those points where they actually had monitoring equipment and telemetry in place were not even collecting data. The gear hadn't been maintained for years. So it was really quite insightful for the utility to actually go through that interview process, because I think they learned a bit about themselves. And ultimately, the recommendation was there's probably some opportunities to take care of some things first before you really consider going down that path of integrating with an intelligent water network solution. That's what they've done, and I understand that they've since actually implemented an IWN solution, which is great. So, yeah, interesting points, Jeff. Anybody else want to add to that?
This is Aaron. One of the things we've seen from talking to utilities and surveying utilities is they've kind of told us that 90% of the data they collect, they don't even do anything with. They're just collecting it for compliance or regulatory purposes, and it's just kind of accruing, and they're not really doing anything with it. And so I think the biggest thing that we've seen from them is beginning to structure the data has been really a big challenge. There isn't a coherent or single structure that you can go to, let alone for the folks that have traveled pretty far down the journey in talking to like Clean Water Services or MSD Cincinnati. Those folks, they said, even when we've tried to kind of get all the data into a single format, there's still two big elements. There's the time structured data, and then there's the geospatial data, and they don't exactly overlay pretty well on each other. So they haven't been able to merge those two kind of sets of data together, even when they get it down to those two. And so they've kind of left it there. They said that's about as condensed as we can get it. But once you get to that level, I think really the struggle is it generally seems to overwhelm most folks, because if you can only even process now 10% of it, and you've got another 90% just lying around, that's definitely a challenge. But my job in terms of talking to folks, one of the things I hear from the folks who actually work in Silicon Valley is they go, the challenge in water is a little bit actually easier. While we think of it as a lot of data, they don't see it as a lot of data. And plus, we have a much better understanding of our systems. Like they're usually there's a point where you can go where you can kind of have a true overall understanding of what's going on. And so they've kind of thought this has been a good sector to approach, but they just don't speak water. And that's been really the challenge, is that we haven't been able to use a lot of the great software engineering tools and the data software tools that have come out of different other sectors. And I think as we start crafting a plan to go forward, I think that's where we're going to start learning a lot from folks. The power sector has done a lot of this work for years. They've had to do the journey before us, and I think that's really going to be critical for us, is to just imitate what else everyone else has done, but critically get water people in the room so that they start speaking our language instead of us having to learn theirs.
Yeah, that's right. And we are quite fortunate because, there are international organizations like SWAN that we can that we can use as a fantastic resource and learn from the examples of utilities, around the world, and really some of the cutting edge ones that have been down this digital path for quite some time. So you're right. There are certainly some sectors, and power is an excellent example of one that is really quite advanced, I think, probably compared to water. So there are a lot of parallels that we can learn from. Okay, well, in the interest of time, we might go ahead and move off onto the next slide, onto discussion topic 2. And I think, really one of the key aspects of putting together any plan is to really identify what is our vision, what's our mission, objectives and goals, how do we measure success, what are the expectations of our customers, our stakeholders and leadership. Do we have any conflicting or inconsistent goals within our organizations? And that kind of ties back to the discussion that I just mentioned before with respect to different priorities within different aspects of the business. So this is really kind of the backbone of putting together a strategy or a plan. And we're actually working with a utility here in New Zealand at present and putting together a strategy for smart water solutions. And that's for water, for wastewater, and for potable water, wastewater, and stormwater. And we set off on that project with a series of workshops. And the first workshop, we really just introduced the concept of a digital utility. The second one was an hour long. It was similar to the interviews that I did with the other utility that I mentioned in Australia, where we had representatives of the different groups within the water utility. It's been very, very insightful, I think, for us, but even more so for the water utility, to bring all those minds together, have that conversation. And as a result of that second workshop, we went through and we identified the vision and the mission, objectives and goals, and some of those key performance criteria for how they measure success. So that was an interesting utility who has also has already embarked on some trials with respect to AMI. They do both monitoring in their water and their wastewater networks, but they recognize that they really want to get to that next chapter, and that's why that they've engaged us, working with Ken Thompson in Denver, to lead this strategy process for them. So this was really is the important foundation for really identifying what does your plan look like? What is your vision? What are you trying to achieve? So I guess going into discussion topic 2, do we know what our client's digital vision is, and has it changed? So we've talked about it a little bit with Aaron and Jeff. You shared some thoughts. So is this a work in process? Is there some inconsistencies within your organization? What are your thoughts with respect to what is your digital vision, and have you defined it yet?
I'll put forward some ideas there, and I've probably got more questions than answers here. It's really around if the business, if it doesn't feel like the business has a cohesive drive to even realise that vision is necessary at the ELT level, or there's not perhaps that consolidation of thought there. Interested in opinions on ways to influence up to help arrive at that realization, that to get to the end goal, because it makes perfect sense to me, and I keep hearing it reiterated over and over again that it pretty much goes vision, strategy, roadmap, and then delivery on from there, obviously with many much detail in between. So yeah, keen to understand how mid-tier management can influence up to get the business to a point to come to an agreed vision.
See, Adrian, that's a discussion topic in its own point, I think, and that's a very interesting question because I've experienced that on both sides. I experienced that even when I was at Wide Bay Water from 2006 to 2009, and I've also experienced it in consulting for a lot of our water utility clients now that that I'm here at Jacobs. So that's an interesting one, influencing upstream. I think obviously each of our organizations has their own corporate vision, and that in itself is obviously separate, quite separate from our digital vision, but those should very well be aligned. And I think with respect to influencing upstream and the ELT and such, I think it's very important that that alignment is well understood, and it's probably critical for the success of a digital program that there is an ambassador, there is a leader, there's somebody who's really carrying that flag at the ELT level. I think, and in my experience, a lot of the larger water utilities, such as yours, Adrian, in the corporate vision, there's a significant component of that is related to digital, and so I think that it's already there. Or it may already be there. One of the challenges probably is that what is digital? It can mean so much, and even
Absolutely.
IT versus OT, and how even
yes.
bespoke solutions, and how do we bring them together in central PI systems and the rest. So I think that it can become such a cumbersome and such a big conversation so quickly that it really requires some of that structure. And I think my advice would be is whomever that ambassador is or ambassadors within your ELT, your organization, to really find out what are the key aspects of that corporate vision, or key challenges are they facing at the moment? What are the problems that they have to solve, that they have to solve quickly? And working with them and the challenges that they have, tying that in with the digital strategy to say, okay, we know that we need to respond to core business function, and there's obviously a lot of critical things that happen very quickly, major asset, compromised asset, mains breaks, and the rest that need to be taken care of. Those are obviously going to be priority within the business. Obviously, some of the big PR types of issues that can occupy a significant amount of resources at that executive level. But I think it is important to make sure that that synergy is there, and really drive that with that senior person, such that you start to have those conversations. I think to wave the banner for SWAN, but SWAN is an excellent forum for that, and the work that Ken Thompson and others have been doing with respect to that maturity model. The brilliant thing, and this is what Ken did when we presented to the utility in New Zealand, is when we went through that maturity model, they scored themselves. We walked them through it. How exactly does that work? And on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about that. And then really compared that to, okay, this is what a lot of the the major utilities in Europe are how they scored, what are their challenges. And I think that in going through a digital journey, it's really helpful to know that you're not the only one carrying the flag, that or you're not being and this is a big one, that you're not being driven by specific vendors who happen to have the best booth at a trade show or the most persuasive salesman, and that you're really looking at technologies that are consistent with your strategy and where you're looking to go, but also capitalizing the investment that you've previously made. So going through that maturity model, I think, helps answer some of those questions. But yeah, complex question, Adrian, and a good discussion. And I may have left you with more questions than answers, but I think that's a very, very important point. How do you influence upstream? And I guess just to quickly close out on that, even my time at Wide Bay Water, there were times when, particularly in operations, and I was relying on operations, and particularly the group that was doing the network monitoring to collect some data, and we were working with Optimatics at the time, and having a lot of challenge to do that. But the CEO, Tim Waldron, at the time was very much, very passionate, very committed to the digital strategy that he had put together. And so he really drove that to the point where at board meetings, he would say, when Eric or when others within our organization come to you and ask these questions, it's coming from me. So yeah, this is coming from the CEO, it's coming from the top. So making sure that you've got that ELT support is critical.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Lots of food for thought there.
Yeah, you bet. Any other discussion on that, or should we head off to the maturity model? I think we might, just in the interest of time, as there is only just under 20 minutes left. So is everybody on the call familiar with the maturity model? I know we talked a little bit about it during the first APAC SWAN conference last July. Is everybody familiar with the maturity model? So go a little bit about it. So I'll go through it just briefly. So what you see here, that graphic, this is basically an outcome of the self-assessment from the utility that we're working with here in New Zealand. And you can see that those scores basically 1 through 5, determining what the maturity is in the 3 different segments of the business: the drinking water reuse, the wastewater, stormwater, and their support systems. And it's really broken up into 6 different categories. And those categories are strategy and vision, data management, analysis and information use, integration, interoperability, workforce asset management, and then resiliency. And really the purpose of this is for a utility to go and self-assess and say, where do we think that we are? And there's in each of these categories. Now, there's obviously a bit more detail behind them and going through answering a series of questions, and that's what then brings up these scores. But it really is quite informative. In fact, the workshops that we ran for the utility here in New Zealand, they went through, we introduced the maturity model, we talked through it, went through all the questions, answered a few questions that they had raised at the time, and they went off and each leaders within each of the units within that utility went and did a self-assessment. The results came back and we went through them, and they were actually quite surprised by some of those results. Some were a little bit lower than they had thought, a couple were about where they expected, a few were a little bit higher. And I think that it really enabled them to think very strategically with respect to where are the gaps, where are we taking a bit of a big step too quickly. And it was really quite a very, very interesting outcome that actually changed the shape of the project and working with them. So ultimately what we had planned was a series of 6 workshops and going through putting together that roadmap for them, and what it's ended up evolving into is they took ownership of their own, developing their own vision and their goals and their objectives, and really where they wanted to focus their attention in their digital roadmap. And they put together a digital roadmap themselves. We did an interactive workshop with them and filled some of the gaps and answered some of the questions. And now it's going into more of a support role as they go through getting ready to tender for a couple of trials of different technologies. We're providing support for that. So in my mind, that was really quite a successful outcome for the reason that they really took ownership of that. And, you know, in a traditional sense, you know, you leave it to the consultant. You've got a consultant there. They ask some questions and put together some data and give us some insights and valuable information. But this was an excellent outcome because they really took some ownership of it. And to me, that demonstrated that looking for a bit more than just a report on the shelf or some recommendations, they really wanted to own it. They wanted to carry it forward, and they wanted to take, you know, some of the experience and the insights that Ken had brought to the team into their trial and where they're looking to go with their own strategy. So this question, I think I might just open it up a little bit for a brief discussion really around the maturity model and what does that mean if you've been involved in going through that within your organization. And following that discussion, we'll head on to the next slide. Is there any discussion that we wanted to do around the maturity model?
Ed, are you able to comment on where you see the average utility that Jacobs works with, like before you start working them, like after, and where kind of in terms of scoring on this model, where do they stand?
That's a really good question. And Ken was going to join this call, and unfortunately, he didn't end up making this roundtable discussion. Now, he's got.
Hi, Eric. I'm going to call now.
Oh, Ken, you have joined. Oh, excellent. Yeah. Did you
want to?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Did you want to comment a little bit on that? Because you've got quite a bit of knowledge, Ken, and working with so many, rolling out and developing the maturity model, but also working with utilities around the world. Did you have some thoughts on the evolution of the scoring with respect to helping them develop and evolve their strategy?
Yeah, we worked with about 40 utilities on the model so far. and it's a pretty wide range. If in some cases utilities were fairly mature, and really what had helped them identify were the key areas, 3 or 4 areas they needed to focus on to take them to the next level. Other ones that were just starting the process used it to identify different goals that they wanted to achieve, both near term and long term, in terms of becoming stronger in the different areas. So it was really a pretty wide range in terms of maturity, based on where the utility was at that point in time. I'd say the ones in the UK were probably stronger than APAC, just because they've been doing this work for a lot longer. And that was one friend, and they're also much bigger organizations, so they have a lot more staff that they could throw at the problem.
Staff and even financial resources presumably as well.
Financial resources for sure is a big deal.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, the important point is that, a red score or a low score isn't necessarily a bad score. It doesn't mean that you're failing. Doesn't mean that just give up. The digital future is not for you. It basically lets you know where you're at, and then you can determine, what are the steps from basically where you are within that aspect of the maturity model, and where do you want to be. Now that actually, and how do you want to get there, which really does tie in quite well with the next slide. Where do we want to be? What are the expectations of implementing digital technologies? What are the concerns? What are the risks? Briefly mentioned earlier, IT versus OT. A lot of discussion starting to happen around that. And is our vision a major paradigm shift for our business? What is the rate of implementation that we need to consider? Is it too disruptive? We hear quite a bit about disruptive technologies, particularly in the operations space. There are some folks that it's not uncommon even for larger utilities. We operate our networks the way we always have, because we know what works. We know when there's a problem, typically what it is. But can we do that better? How can we improve that? How can we gather information from events that happen within our network and then generate those actionable insights that we talked about before? So that paradigm shift, I think, is really quite a big topic to be considering when putting together a strategy for becoming a digital utility, to determine really how disruptive that is going to be to your business, and what steps do you need to consider to minimize that disruption, but bring people on board such that they have ownership, particularly some of your key members of operations staff who may very well know the network intimately in their mind, and not a lot of that has made it into GIS or other databases. How is it funded? Ken just mentioned that some of the large utilities have more resources at hand, which is certainly true. And again, what is the opportunity cost of siloed adoption of technology? So if you're just trying to solve a particular problem and throwing a solution at it, is there an opportunity cost of not taking a step back, looking at a broader solution that may very well address that concern, but also others, or technologies that can share information between themselves or communicate to a central system? So there's a lot of things, a lot of things to consider as part of that process. So I think, as part of discussion topic 4, what problems do you wish to solve through implementing technology, and what are the barriers? We talked a little bit before about collecting data for network model calibration and overflows within our CSO systems. And maybe more specifically, or even more generally, are there specific problems that we're looking to solve in our organizations through implementing technology? And what are the barriers to those?
I'll jump in again, and cut me off if I go on too long. But I think one of the problems that I'm hoping that we start to understand that we can solve organization-wide is just understanding what's going on in real time everywhere in the network is going to help us do a lot of things better. I think we have the burden and the luxury in program planning to be able to kind of think of these long range plans and what we might do with all this really cool data, but we have to remember that there's parts of our the operations department in particular, pump stations division, they are kind of running around putting out fires, and they have to be thinking about what's going on right now, what's breaking that they need to fix, and how to keep the system operating. And they don't really have the luxury of thinking long term and what they might do with additional data. And so that's the barrier for us, is to I think we have some buy-in, but I think there's still a lot of skepticism on really how much better we could be if we were a digital utility within certain parts of our organization. So those are the barriers we constantly run into. And I think it's not, I try to think of it not as a barrier all the time, but as something I need to understand why they are struggling with the idea of it, and then think of ways to demonstrate the benefits of becoming a digital utility. I think it's just, you have to bring them along on the journey, and you have to have people that are constantly in your organization are constantly striving to help the digital utility reality happen. And we have a few of those people in our organization, and I think it's really, you just have to have people that are tireless about trying to make it happen, to bring the people who are skeptics, or people who are in the moment just trying to keep things going, to help them see the benefits of this process.
And that is a key part of a strategic plan, such that, in implementing technology, you're not trying to make their lives more difficult, but you're trying to help them solve problems, become more effective, and more proactive rather than reactive. So, maybe you're identifying some of those issues before they really turn into major issues, such that they are running around putting up brush fires all the time. There's always going to be issues. We're never going to be able to fully eliminate them, but how can we do that more efficiently? How can we do that more proactively? And I think carrying them along for the journey is really a critical part of the strategic plan. That interview process, when you're identifying your objectives and your vision and your goals, your key performance KPIs, I think that is a really good opportunity to talk with those different groups within our organizations to say, really, what are your concerns? If we were to what are the problems that would make your job easier if we were able to solve? And then that may very well help prioritize some of the things that you're looking to do within your strategic plan, such that that you're really getting them on board, and you're identifying to them that the problems that you have are not insignificant. And just because we may be doing things manually doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna sit on the sidelines as we go forward with the digital strategy. So yeah, those are very important conversations, and I think bringing them along for the journey, there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge, really, from even those manual, I think, responses and reactive management of our networks, that is really valuable insights with respect to how do we go forward with implementing technologies. Yeah, that's a good point.
Jeff, we talked about collaboration versus engagement yesterday, and it's really important to have the operations staff engaged, but engaged in a way that it's going to be meaningful for them. Having run operations for 20 years on the utility side, the last thing the maintenance and operating folks want to do is go into another meeting, because they figure they had their real job to do. So you have to make sure that the meetings are concise, and they feel like they're getting something out of it, and not just talking all the time, and really not letting them feel like they're really being heard, and there's going to be some actionable steps taken that's going to, like I said, is going to help their job become easier. Probably the best example I have was City of Dallas. There's a person, Johnny Partains, who his number one job was just to look at data. And he spent every 40 hours a week looking at data and trying to figure out, okay, what do I do with it? Once we put the system in place for him, he was able to look at insights instead of data, and actually drive that into their capital program, drive that into their predictive maintenance program. And he goes, yeah, my life has totally changed. I'm doing something different now, and different in a good way, because it's allowing me to actually make a difference rather than just looking at spreadsheets all day long. So it's really helping them figure out, what do they need to be more successful? and not that they're not doing the best job they can, but it's a way to make their job easier and allow them to do things that are going to be, they're going to feel that it's going to provide a greater, higher value for the overall operations. Yes, it's an operation maintenance group that's near and dear to my heart. I lived with them for 20 years, and yes, I really need to focus a lot on them because that's an important group and one of the hardest groups to break into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. Thanks for that, Ken. Thanks, Jeff. So into the concluding slide, how do we answer all these questions? How do we bring all this together? And the obvious answer, and really the backbone of today's discussion, is the strategic plan. It's integral to success. Again, to summarize, it's very important to involve cross-functional teams in the development of that strategic plan, making sure that you're identifying where are the challenges, where are the opportunities within your organization, but also going back to that previous discussion, making sure that people with challenges within your business are not only sharing their challenges and opportunities, but they feel like they're heard. They're part of the journey. And involve your peers. SWAN is an excellent forum for this, and we are quite fortunate because the world is going through this digital journey at present, and there's a lot of our peers who have had some of the same challenges that we have, and are considering some of the same solutions that we may be considering. So SWAN is an excellent forum for this, as are other organizations, whether it's the annual Ozwater conference or others. And again, defining, confirming your vision, your mission, your goals, objectives, and how do we measure success, that is absolutely critical. Without that, we really don't have a plan because we don't know what we're trying to achieve. And going back to the previous discussion, making sure that our digital vision and our digital strategy is consistent with the overall corporate vision and strategy. And revisit the plan. It's not something that's static, that sits on a shelf, and once we come up with a plan, we've solved all of our problems. Our problems will continue to evolve, as will the technologies that we employ. So and or organizations themselves, and our challenge and cybersecurity risks. It's an evolving world, and things will change, and so it is important to revisit the plan. And one key point that I know Ken speaks about quite often, and it's been a big part of the conversation that we've had with the project we've been delivering here in New Zealand, is sustainability and resiliency. These have become a bit of buzzwords, I think, in the last several years, but it is important that when we're going through the different all the different aspects of your strategic plan, that you're casting a lens of sustainability and resiliency over each of those elements, because I think that really is, you'll find that that is integral to, I think, all the different components of our strategic plan and our operating utilities. So I think with the few minutes that we have left, I hope that today's discussion has been useful. I hope that it's been informative, and it's good to talk about this kind of stuff and share experiences. But any closing thoughts with respect to what we will carry with us from today, and is there anything that we might do differently?
Eric, I can mention that if any utility is interested in filling out the maturity model, it is available online electronically, and I can send you the link to it, and you can go ahead and fill in your own information. Everything is kept anonymous, but you will get an overall rating for where you are currently in this state. And it's important to understand that if your utility hasn't been down a smart water journey, it doesn't mean you're not doing a good job. It's just, this is a different focus that you've had in the past. And you want to figure out, based on this new focus, where do I need to strengthen my overall organization up to be able to implement these projects more efficiently and in a way that's going to really create maximum value for your entire organization, and not just a single one-off project.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And Ken, so is that something that people would contact you, or is that something that can be accessed through the SWAN website?
They'd have to contact me for it right now. We're going to put it on the SWAN website soon, but right now I have the link to it.
Okay, no, that's excellent. Thanks, Ken. So yeah, everybody reach out to Ken for a link to that. And we've got about 30 seconds before we get the boot, is what the message is telling me. So any last closing comments? No, that's great. Well, I want to thank everybody for participating today. I think it's been a good discussion, and hopefully you all got something out of it, and look forward to continuing to keep in touch and engage through SWAN and otherwise. So thanks so much for your participation today, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
And returning, when we return from the break, I just ask that everybody uses the main conference link. As a reminder, there are 2 links that we've been using for the conference. So if you join on one and you don't see anybody there, use the other link. Just a reminder that we do, it might take a few minutes as well. So again, thank you for taking part in the interactive roundtable discussions. I don't know how it went in your group, but mine was absolutely fantastic, really stimulating discussions, and woof, my brain is excited. So again, we look forward to seeing you on the main conference link when we start back up. Take care.
Hi, Prabhu. How you doing?
Hi.
This is Ken.
Hey, Ken.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. Good job with your intro
So
earlier.
we've been using 2 links, but now.
Yeah, I finally got in.
Hey, good morning, Ken.
Good morning.
Michael.
Hey, Michael. Hey, how's it going?